Hello, how are you guys? Welcome to Carlie's Couch. Hi, Carlie.
Hey, Lex, how you doing?
Good. Is it weird to be like, hey, girl, how are you? After we'd already been around each other for like a couple hours today?
I mean, it just
To
happened.
do that
So
for
was
the
it weird?
episode? Like, do we have to greet each other for people? That's just a random thought I just literally had.
I
Like,
don't know.
why not just be
I
like,
don't know.
all right, y'all, so
Here's what's up. I don't know. Are you? But I feel like you're not one of those people. Like when you text, like that you usually have to have salutations or greetings. It's usually probably just like this is what it is.
yeah. But more so, I'm just thinking about like what's the reasoning to do that, What's the reasoning to greet each other? I get greeting the listeners like, hi, guys, hope you're doing well. Thanks for listening.
I mean,
I guess it's just
something could have changed.
It's like you're doing formalities with each other for other people.
Yeah. But also something could have changed from the last episode to this one just to see how you're feeling.
Yeah. Well, I got attitude last episode. For those of you who don't realize or know, we tape multiple episodes, or at least a couple at a time, so we can get a little bit ahead. Shout out to not missing a week yet.
Hey, we at 80-something right now.
Yeah. So like we'll usually get together and bang a couple out. You can usually tell by my hair, like which ones we did at the same time.
But we do change clothes and switch sides for a little razzle dazzle.
Yeah, we switch it up on the fits a little bit, so you can have something to look at when you check out the YouTube videos. So thanks for those who watch. Thanks for those who listen. Thanks for those who leave reviews and 5 stars on iTunes as well, because that's what's probably most important. So thank you.
And if you haven't, please go do so. And if you feel so led, share it with a friend.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've got a few new YouTube subscribers I noticed as well recently. So we're excited for that. So glad to see the community grow, and we hope that you continue to get something out of it.
And speaking of 80-something episodes, it's starting to be hard for me to find clothes to wear that I haven't already worn on a podcast.
Well, you can repeat.
Yeah, no, I know. But one day I accidentally repeated the same shirt within like 3 episodes.
Oh, shit.
I know. I was like, damn. But today, if you're watching the video... If you're not, sorry. But if you're watching the video, I have on a new shirt that I have, which is actually what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, that is nice, though, too.
Yeah, super fire. So it's a T-shirt, and it says Greenwood Ave.
The back says recording sessions, and it says Fire in Little Africa 2020. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I think it really kind of sets the tone for what we'll be discussing today. Recently, I went back home to Oklahoma. Before all the pandemic things hit. So it was right before they started canceling everything. And I'm so, so grateful and so glad that they did not cancel this trip, because I have been so excited about going back to Oklahoma, which I normally never am. I'm always like, I've got to go back to Oklahoma. It's great to see family, but like there's just not a lot to do in Oklahoma. But this particular trip was incited by like my friend Stevie. His name is Dr. Stevie Johnson. He is phenomenal. He's a DJ. He's a doctor. He's just an all-around great person, but he now resides in the town, or Tulsa, Oklahoma. And he works for the Kaiser Foundation on a few levels with like the Woody Guthrie Center and the Bob Dylan Center. So they have, the Kaiser family is from Tulsa, and they spend all of their philanthropic dollars in Tulsa, like to bring up the area and different things. And so those are museums and centers that they have. And he recently accepted a position out there, and so moved his whole family out there, and sent me an email one day and was like, hey, fam, check your email. And I'm like, okay. And it says a fire in Little Africa at the top of my email. And I'm like, what is this? And I start reading through, and I was just absolutely blown away by the thought and the detail in the email. And it's about the 100th anniversary of Black Wall Street is next year in 2021. And A Fire in Little Africa is a hip-hop compilation project with a documentary, an album, and just a general, I would call it a renaissance, in my words, not theirs, for the Tulsa area, through arts, through hip-hop, through everything that they're doing to rebuild Black Wall Street, or the Greenwood district, which is why the front of my shirt says Greenwood Ave. And so I guess I'll start it with, Lex, have you ever heard of Black Wall Street?
Mm-hmm.
When did you hear about it, or how and what like capacity?
I don't remember. Probably in school at some point, maybe high school or college. Yeah, I don't really remember. Like nothing with Black history or African American history is like necessarily like instilled from school at particular times. And then my family I think what I learned, like through family, et cetera, is more regional from, around my area or with the history of my family, which is also international as well. And so I don't remember when exactly I heard about it, but I'm familiar with it.
And if y'all don't know, Alexi is from North Carolina. I'm from Oklahoma. And so I learned about Black Wall Street whenever I was a senior in high school. I was in AP English, and we read a book.
I'm surprised it was that late.
Social
studies, your state is like 4th grade.
But the crazy part is the first year it will be ever mandatory to teach about Black Wall Street is next year in curriculum. And so a lot of districts, a lot of schools do not. Like a lot of Black people from Oklahoma don't even know about Black Wall Street.
I think that's
wild.
Yeah.
It's absolutely wild. And so Black Wall Street was much more than a street. I'm going to give a little bit of history and then get into the weekend and then why I'm even talking about what I'm talking about. But what I learned about when I heard about Black Wall Street was that there was a riot, that Black people and white people were fighting because supposedly a Black man attacked a white woman, which is the typical excuse to plunder and murder people. And that was pretty much it. It was a riot. It happened, like maybe 30 people died or something like that. None of that is true. Actually, Black Wall Street was much more than a street. It was the Greenwood district. It had about 15,000 people. It was 35 blocks, 4 square miles. In the state of Oklahoma, there were, I think right before it became a state or right around that time, there were 50 all-Black townships. And so Oklahoma was almost a Black state. It was also where the Trail of Tears ended. So there was a lot of Native American people, a lot of freedmen, which were slaves that the Native Americans owned that became freedmen after, and they were legally a part of the tribes. And they got land allotments of like 160 acres. So there was just so much land. There was so much opportunity for Native Americans and for Black people in Oklahoma. And so there was a big push to get people to move there, which is why the Greenwood district was flourishing in the way that it was. So when you start thinking about like the history at that time in the 1920s, that's like right on the cusp of like the Great Depression and all the stuff that was happening. But here are these Black townships like flourishing and having like, the Cotton Club and these amazing hotels. Like I think it said the only 5-star hotel or something like that, like in the US, like one of the top hotels, like all of these things were happening in Oklahoma. And it's just really, and I think
what is the time period?
This is 1920. Like 1921 is when the massacre, the Tulsa Race Massacre, which is a more appropriate name for it, happened. But, they were building those townships all around then. And so in 1921, the Race Massacre happened because there's a man named Dickie Rowland, and I believe he was a shoe shiner, but he was just really good at what he did. He was an entrepreneur, and he had special access to this building that typically Black people couldn't go into. But they told him, like, since you're on this side of town shining shoes, you can use our restroom at the top floor. And so that's whenever he got into the elevator with the white woman, and supposedly they were in a consensual relationship, but people were jealous and said that it was something that it wasn't. And that's kind of what incited the whole massacre. But I also just think, like, if you think about where this is, so it's in Oklahoma. Yes, there's all these Black townships. There's where the Trail of Tears ended. There's all these Black people that are successful, all these Native American people, and these white people see this and they're on the verge of depression. Like, there was a lot of tension building and things that were happening around then. And so that was just an excuse to, burn down and bomb down the town. And so the first part of A Fire in Little Africa was actually just going to the Greenwood Cultural Center in the Greenwood district to learn about the actual history that happened, because even being from Oklahoma, I didn't know a lot of these things. I didn't know that the district was so big. I didn't realize that it was set off by Dickie Rowland, who back in the day, he was making so much money that he had a diamond encrusted belt buckle back in the 20s, which is like also really cool to think of, just because there's so much history that gets left out for people of color, but primarily Black people, to know that there's so much more than slavery. They're not teaching that in schools. And it can be empowering to hear like a different side of history, like to hear that even though all of the white people around the area were coming to burn down and take down this district, that everybody took up arms and were protecting their businesses and were fighting back and protecting women and children. And that, even 4 years after that, in 1925, that it was rebuilt. The Greenwood district was completely rebuilt. And thinking about how powerful that is to hear that side of the story as opposed to just like, oh, you know, it got bombed and burned down and that just is what it is.
And if you're unfamiliar with it, the first episode of Watchmen depicts this event, and it's very hard to watch kind of because it really like goes in as far as like all the chaos that's going on where people are like fighting in the streets and, you know, shooting at just anybody, etc. So that's something to watch if you just want to get some type of a visual to kind of go along with it as well, along with whatever you read.
Yeah, exactly. And to do more research, I would encourage you to actually go to Tulsa because I actually want to go back and take a tour. The weather in Oklahoma, per usual, was not being accommodating. And so our outside tour got cut down really small because it started raining. But just, you know, really understanding the intricacies and not just for the pain and the trauma porn and things like that, but to understand the resiliency, the fact that they rebuilt of the businesses, just to give y'all another like bird's eye view like of the Greenwood district and this time to put it in perspective. Of the people who actually filed insurance claims for their businesses, I think it was around like 2,900,000 ish, like back then. So I think 1921
dollars or what?
Dollars, yes, 2,900,000 like back then. And they said the inflation rate, if you have multiply it by about 30. So think about that now. Like that is wild, like almost $3 million times 30. Like, but back then in the 1920s, like that is how opulent and amazing and beautiful like this whole space was. And it really sets the tone for Tulsa and the history and why it's important to, you know, reclaim and retell these narratives from people who were actually there, from their ancestors, and not just the sanitized version that fits nicely into history books.
Mm-hmm. So when you went out there, what were you going to do?
So A Fire in Little Africa is like this project that Stevie, that Brandon, that a lot of the people in Tulsa are working on, a hip hop compilation project, like I said, with a documentary, with an album, with, I don't even know how to encapsulate it, with so much to reclaim that narrative, but also to create a space where Oklahoma hip hop, you know, has a platform to connect with people, to tell their stories, but also where the history of Tulsa can be told in a way that honors the legacy of what Tulsa actually is.
So is it like a physical center or?
There are physical centers, but it's more of a movement. It's more of a movement, I would say. So it's a movement to do that. When I asked Stevie to kind of to synthesize it down because it's so much, he said that the main goal of it is to provide access for artists to the hip hop industry and utilizing the amazing talent that Tulsa has right in Tulsa, like building those infrastructures to help support each other. But also at the core, it's the beginning of people going back to making classic albums reflective of the times to help people reimagine how powerful people of color, but primarily Black people, are when they come together, and learning how to utilize hip hop in a way that pays respect to the artists and the activists in each person. So really rebuilding this whole mentality, like the Black Wall Street may have been demolished and they dropped bombs on it, but the mentality never left. The fire never died. And A Fire in Little Africa actually came from a photo taken back then that said, you know, Little Africa is burning. Like back in the day of the massacre, somebody had taken a picture of all the plumes of smoke and everything and said, oh, Little Africa is burning. And so essentially, you know, the people of Tulsa, the hip hop scene in Tulsa is saying, you know, the fire never went out. The mentality to build up our community, to support each other, never went out. Like back in the day, $1, I think, would circulate 19 times within the Black community before it would leave and go somewhere else. And so they're really just building on this Black Wall Street mentality of, you know, supporting each other.
So when it was rebuilt in 25, what was the difference then?
A lot of people, like some people had moved away, different things that happened. The Great Depression was about to happen. So the economy took a hit, but also the government started doing what the government does and systematically changing things and redistricting things. Eventually, they built a highway right through the middle of the Greenwood district. So it kind of kept it from going back to the original glory that it was. And so we started at the Greenwood Center to, you know, learn about the history of Black Wall Street. Like I said, please go research it. It is so rich. It is so powerful and so, I think, vital to understand just in a community in ways that people can come together and support each other. But then we also started to tour New Greenwood, so Black-owned businesses that they've rebuilt in Greenwood and centers and things that they're opening in ways that they're bringing people together.
So is it still a mostly Black area now?
It is. The businesses, they got bought up by a lot of people who are not Black, but there are still like all Black businesses, and a lot of the families and the people who were in Black Wall Street, their ancestors, like those are their ancestors. They're still living in Greenwood. And so it's kind of cool to see. Like I said, got to tour, got to meet. We had a meet and greet with a bunch of local Black business owners just to hear what they're working on and how they're trying to revitalize things. And basically, like I said, reclaiming that narrative of what Black Wall Street is and how we can use that to come together as a community to actually like heal and process trauma.
So would you say from the trip, like, were you there to learn? Were you just like inspired from it? Like, what do you feel like was the purpose for you?
The purpose was to, I think a few things is to, help inform. So to show us, because a lot of times Oklahoma is overlooked for a lot of reasons.
So they're kind of using you guys to be kind of ambassadors.
Exactly. So they brought in a bunch of journalists, a bunch of people from podcasts, for writers, hip hop artists, like people on the scene, like to come in and to see all the things that they're working on, but also to, hear the real story. So instead of watching Watchmen, instead of, that 2-sentence paragraph in our history books, like we actually get to see it in person and hear what really happened from people who were there. And then to also understand like what the hip hop scene looks like and all the things that they're working towards, like as a collective. So I'm inspired and like just much more informed. Like I said, I just left feeling like, wow, like I told them, this is the first time I've ever felt like it's been cool to be from Oklahoma. And I mean that because normally people are like, oh, where are you from? Oklahoma? Oh man, I've never met anybody from there. Or, oh, Oklahoma, that's cool. Oh man, you from Dallas? And people get really hype about people being from different geographical locations, but this is the first time people are like, oh man, you from Oklahoma? Oh man, that's what's up. What part? So I told Stevie that he's making it cool to be from Oklahoma again. And the funny part is, this stuff has already been there, and he's actually from Texas, which I find even funnier, that he's been there. But the overall experience was to bring people in and to help make them ambassadors, but to show us all of the work that they've been doing, all that, that this fire never went out, that it never died, and, creating this narrative in a way that tells the story from the people who were there, but also opens up the discussion and brings more attention to what they're doing.
Who are these people who were there if this is in 1921? Who are the people who were there?
What do you mean?
You're talking about people who were there?
I was talking about from the weekend.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about like people telling their stories from the Tulsa Massacre.
Well, they actually did. So the Greenwood Center has stories from all the survivors, and you can like hear they recorded them, like of people actually telling their story. So I don't know if that's on their website, but at the actual Greenwood Cultural Center, like you can go and then see pictures of the survivors, and they either wrote out or some video recorded what they remember and how they felt and what was happening. So actually like direct impact from people who were there, but. In a fire in Little Africa, currently they brought all of us in, like I said, journalists, podcasters, like people who are on the scene to be a part of this weekend to show us, what they're working on, what they've been working on, to tell us the history, and then also to bring us into the future of what they're working towards.
So it's an ongoing like organization that's just doing different things in the community.
Yep, they do a lot of different stuff. They support each other through everything. We went to a couple of music venues. There's actually a lot of historical venues in Oklahoma. Like I said, I'm really surprised because I'm from there and never knew. Like Kane's Ballroom is like a world-renowned music venue. Had no idea that it was there. Sound Pony, which is also like a really cool music venue and really great on like the smaller circuits. Like didn't know it was there. And so we got the opportunity to hear a lot of Tulsa artists and to hear the people who created the sound. We got to meet the people who actually started the hip hop movement in Oklahoma, like that first recorded a CD back in the day in Oklahoma, and like where they're trying to take it in the future.
So what is the sound of Tulsa, and like what's important about like hyping, the hip hop out of a region, like for them?
I think it's important. So the sound of it is a lot for me, a lot of community, a lot of love, and a lot of like paying homage to ancestors that paved the way. The sound is different. It's not a cohesive sound, but I would say it's a mix of a lot of Southern like love and typical things with like older samples, and kind of how Crit floats on a beat to me is how some of the artists sound. But there's also some that sound like Ninth Wonder and that sound like different people from all over. I think it's important to bring access and awareness because this is truly such a historically rich area, and it's an unestablished scene, like it's an untapped resource. And so I think it's important to, you know, bring awareness and to create foundations so that they also can tell their stories and share all of the amazing things that they're doing. And I would even venture to say that their hip hop is much more purpose driven than a lot that's currently out there, because every artist that I met, everybody, because we got to go to recording studios and hear what they're working on and see things, and you know, to see the cultural center that is a museum during the day turned into a recording studio at night, and people walking around with violins and saxophones hopping on tracks and doing different things. They, you know, say that they're doing it for not just their families, not just for their community, but for humanity. Like trying to be very intentional with this community mindset and how they're bringing things together.
That's pretty cool. I'd like to know who some of the artists are. I don't know if you know.
Oh yeah, no, I have a list. So Playin 1000. Actually are the first. It was like the first group, I believe. And let me not lie, because I have all my notes in my phone and that I was taking down. But I believe they're the first group that actually recorded one, and we got to meet both of them in person. They're
recorded
both still
one what though? Like
an
what?
album, like a hip hop album. They were the first people to book like studio time and to record hip hop in the state of Oklahoma.
Okay,
which is really cool. And then some current artists. Steph Simon, who was one of my favorites, Dow Tone, St. Dominic, MC, Thomas who is actually from Oklahoma City, and then Jacoby Ryan. Some people we had an opportunity to see a lot of them perform, to hear a lot of their stories about, you know, how they got into hip hop. Oh, First Verse, who's amazing. We got to see, like I said, a lot of them perform, a lot of them talk about their writing process. There was a live podcast interview from Bottom of the Map. It's a hip hop podcast that's sponsored by NPR. They did a live podcast with them, and we got to ask questions. One of the radio personalities did a live panel interview with some of the artists, and, you know, talking about, you know, do they want to stay in Oklahoma, or if they do, why? And if not, you know, why? And people figuring out, like, if I want to make it as an artist, like, do I have to leave Tulsa? Like, do I just have to go to a bigger market? Or if I don't want to leave Tulsa, like, how can I still scale what I'm doing and bring stuff back to the community if, you know, my family's here and I don't want to leave?
Mm-hmm. And so do you think that hinders them by being so Tulsa oriented? Because why would I ever reach out to listen to that?
I think that's an interesting question. I think
it's almost like you're saying, I'm okay being regional and I'm okay being here, which I don't know, might be a thing to accept. But if there's some other message that, you know, you think you want to express to get to, bigger audiences or wider audiences, then yeah, it makes sense to be in those bigger spaces.
Agreed. I think the answer is somewhere in between. I think right now, you know, how it stands with the access that is in Oklahoma, which is, you know, not that much yet. They do have to venture into bigger markets. And if that looks like maybe opening up for bigger like acts and then, you know, just coming back, if that means moving, I think that kind of differs person to person. But the cool part is all of them seem so community oriented, like wanting to pour back into that. And so the question is like, well, how can I scale and get bigger while also pouring very much into something that I love? And I don't know if there's an answer.
I feel like that's easy because doesn't a lot of artists, like, you know where they're from? Because when they get bigger now, yeah, Big Sean can put on for Detroit because everybody knows him. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And so you have the space to do that. Same with like in your professional life or success, where it's like, yeah, you can stay small, but being bigger, making more allows you to get back more. So I would say that probably part of this program was because they want to, you know, you guys to really learn about it and be excited as you are, and then go out and spread and talk about it so that maybe other people do listen. They might get into it. I suggest all of you guys like check out some of these artists and look into Greenwood.
Yeah.
Am I about to say it wrong?
No, you got
into
the
Greenwood district and all of that for themselves. And I think that's maybe the purpose, is that you do have to expand beyond your community. Otherwise, you know, you lived there and didn't know about the stuff. So it's like you have to be looking for, and you have to be out there to tell other people to look at this, or to make them think like, oh, what's this about you? Where are you from?
Yeah. And I think some of them do actually, like, you know, want to leave and be able to do that. But like I said, what I was struck by was just how everybody really is tied into like so much into like where they're from and wanting to rebuild. It's not like I'm just trying to go to LA and make it. It's like, no, I want to go to LA and then come back and then bring access and resources to these people. And just the community, I think it's also cool in the hip hop scene and being something like that, because it is such an untapped market that there's a lot more freedom. There's a lot more opportunity to help build each other up. Like they were talking about how they barter for everything, like people hopping on people's tracks for stuff. They're wearing their own merch. They're wearing stuff that they make. Like everybody was wearing somebody else's stuff, but it was all about like, what is this legacy that we're leaving, and how can we as a community come together and build this thing and push it forward, which was really, really awesome. You know,
so what did you gain from that as far as thinking about groups and people and how they work together? Like, what do you take away from that to make you say, this is how I want to approach something for myself, or how I'm moving, or whatever you want to bring attention to with your life?
So have you seen the documentary on YouTube for Revenge of the Dreamers 3? Like the Dreamville documentary. So it's like a 30-minute documentary that they did, and it's about how they made Revenge of the Dreamers. J. Cole has said, like, you know, because he wasn't, no features, like that joke, but he was like, man, I don't want to look up and realize I didn't work with all these people just because. And so he decided to bring all these people together to create these sounds it's like a mastermind in a sense of putting all these people who wouldn't typically be in the same room together to see what else y'all can create and to create new things. And I was always struck by that. And Stevie had mentioned it while we were there. He's like, you know, we're doing what they did. He was like, but with intention, you know, to save the community, to save humanity, to work on making the world a better place. Like it's about more than just music. And so in my head, it's like, you know, how can I bring all of these people together? Like, even if they have seemingly disparate skills, disparate, like different connections, different things, so that we can all collectively, you know, work on building this like tribal mentality to help build each other up and edify everyone else, but also to further the causes and the community in ways that make sense. Something that Stevie said was like, hip hop edifies and builds. And it's the hottest thing right now, like cultural IP wise, that, you know, music, it really is. It kind of drives everything. And so that is a vehicle that allows them to tell their story and to do these things. So that's like what he sees as that. And so for me, it's just, you know, how can I be as intentional with my gifts, with the way that I'm bringing people into my life, with the way that I create brave spaces for people to work together and flow together so that we can help the collective.
Okay, I think that's good. I feel like that's something that you already had in mind, maybe, though.
Yeah, it definitely is synchronistic. I'm going to be real. I was trying to get Stevie to move to LA so he could be a part of all of this stuff. But he said it was his spirit that really got him to move back to Tulsa. And when he told me he's moving to Tulsa, at first I was like, in my head, like, why? Because normally people from Texas hate on Oklahoma. So I thought it was an interesting choice for him, regional beef. But when I got there and I just felt it, I feel like I might even be doing Tulsa a disservice right now, because I'm not able to explain how magical the place was and how magical that moment is, to see so many people giving their heart and soul to a movement to make something better, to tell this story, to tell this narrative. And it is something that I'm working on, but I left feeling so much more inspired and challenged, I think, in ways to do better and to do more and to think bigger for all of the dreams that I have.
And what is your continued work with them or follow up with them?
I don't know yet. I know that I'm supporting anything that they do. I definitely, like I said, have on this, looking to buy some more merch from them and support those things. Like I said, they have an album coming out soon. It is a movement. It is continuous. They will have merch. They have all these things to help tell this story. I will definitely be writing a blog on it later. Told Stevie I was doing this podcast because I'm still super excited. Like I said, I've never been so excited to go back to Oklahoma, and excited coming back, like leaving feeling like this. But also like thinking about health and wellness. So how does health and wellness play? Because even when I saw the Dreamville documentary, I was like, damn, they needed a yoga teacher. Like I should have been there. Like I could have been doing breath work and stuff with them. And I got to teach some mindfulness exercise and some breath work to some of the artists and to some of the other journalists and people there. And it was really beautiful for me. So I'm thinking about, how can I help in a wellness capacity, if that's programming, curriculum, if that's me just doing program development and teaching them ways to, be more mindful with their bodies. Like, what can that look like? So I'm still kind of working through it.
And do you see yourself going back to Oklahoma or staying in Oklahoma as far as being called to focus your work there?
No, I think that I not for me, but I wouldn't mind splitting time there. Like I met someone who splits her time between New York and Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. So she does 3 weeks in New York, 1 week in Oklahoma or something like that. And I was like, that like I could probably do that. But I probably want to live a bi-coastal or bi-place lifestyle anyway. So not spending all of my time in one place. I could definitely see that in my future. Moving back, no, but if you are a remote worker, they have amazing opportunities where they will pay you to do your remote work in the state of Oklahoma. Because the Kaiser family and just a lot of the initiatives are really about, rebuilding that area, telling that narrative, and creating opportunities in a space that's really beautiful. We even went to, now they have one of the best parks in the whole world in Tulsa, and it's because of the Kaiser family. It's like a $500 million park where everything is free for all the families who come. They even send transportation to different neighborhoods so that everybody has access. Like even if you don't have a car, you can feed a family of 4 for like $20. At this park and check out.
What kind of park are we talking about?
It's like this huge outdoor park. Okay. No, but they have like
a recreational space.
Yeah, like a recreational space where there's it's almost like an indoor-outdoor co-working space, but lots of restaurants. There's a museum. There's this lake. There's a river. There's all this cool stuff where you can do. But they're really, building up that area to bring people back.
Mm-hmm. You keep saying bring people back, and why? I don't understand, why are people gone? What are we still? We're still trying to get the place popping. Is that what we're saying? Since 21?
Yeah,
that's what it sounds like.
Kinda.
It's all right, I'm trying to get it popping, trying to get people here. Why aren't people there?
Well, because it's the same reason when people are like, "Oh, you're from Oklahoma," because you just don't hear about it, and what you hear is not necessarily great or advantageous things if you're thinking about being innovative or forward focused. And I think that is one of the underlying messages of the trip is Tulsa has something to say, whether it's hip hop, whether it's innovation, whether it's, making the world a better place, and that they're saying it, and that, the world needs to pay attention and if not, they're going to make them pay attention soon.
All right. Well, we look forward to hearing, however it comes out.
Yeah. Like I said, I hope that I did them justice. I really want y'all to check them out, and to support the things that they're doing. Shout out to Stevie, Dr. Stevie Johnson, for putting this together, Brandon Odom for helping be our tour guide and bring all of that, those things. And then I want to read a quote by Dr. Rico Wright. He has a museum right there on Greenwood. And this is from his collection right now, which is a healing collective. And it says, by fully understanding our shared history, we can recognize our individual and collective connections to the healing that our community needs. In this way, healing becomes a path to unity, whereupon the oppressed and the oppressor liberate themselves and find harmony. And I think when we're thinking about history, and why there's a lot of talk about, why people don't just get over it? That was 100 years ago. It's how do you process something that hasn't been talked about, that nobody has really agreed upon, that nothing has been done about? It's this cycle of learning to heal, but ultimately the goal is to help build each other up and build up our community. And so that's really my takeaway. Those are really my takeaways, is that, Oklahoma has something to say, that they're saying it, and that they're so community focused, so driven to make it for each other, but also to, make the world a better place. How can I not leave feeling super inspired? And the shout out is to check out their website, fireinlittleafrica.com. They have merch. They have access to all of the artists. I'll put a few of their names in here so you can check them out too. I already found me a few good jams. Shout out to Steph Simon. One of them has a Kirk Franklin sample that I cannot stop playing. He was teasing me. He's like, "Oh man, you found my church song." And I was like, and I cannot stop playing it. But just shout out to them for such an amazing time and showing me, other facets to where I grew up and why it's so special.
Cool. So shout out to you guys. We want you all to check them out. Do you have a question of the week? So I'm going to ask a question of the week. If you could, what one thing would you disinvent?
Oh, one thing? What one thing would I disinvent? Oh, man.
Look, I'm trying to think too.
I'm like, do you have an answer? Because,
trying to think of something that's annoying.
Same.
But then that also have purposes.
Yeah, that's what I say. That doesn't serve a purpose. Something that we don't need that is annoying.
Or they just don't like the people do or use.
This might be the first time we've been stumped for question of the week. 80-some episodes. That's something to be pretty proud of.
It's got to be something that pollutes the world or something. Dang, how different would the world be, though, if you just invented, like, anything technological or...
Dog. Yeah, because I was like, pollution, factories. But then wait, we wouldn't have anything.
I mean, you would. We would just be on chill mode, like, not with as many options. I don't know, but I'll tell you, since we don't think of anything, I was thinking the other day about... it's not really an invention, but while riding in the car, I was like, man, they should have... Or why don't they have... like the driving school cars have both the pedals and the steering wheel on both sides. It's like, why don't by now they have a thing where I could just be in the passenger side, click the button, and now my steering wheel comes up, because it's like, yo, can you get the wheel for a second? I got to do something. Or like, all right, I'm tired. And instead of getting out and switching, like it just come out and like I can just drive from this side, because cars, British cars or anything that's British Commonwealth is left side of the street and the other side of their car anyway. So it's not like it can't be on that side. So I wondered about that. Like, is there a way we can make, like, you could drive from either side of the front?
That's pretty cool. I hadn't thought about that.
Without it being, like, bulky in the way, if it just went in and went out. Yeah.
That'd be a good invention. I would just wonder why we can't teleport yet. But at this point, like with the pandemic, like that would just be a lot more problems than...
Probably. Probably.
But if there anything that y'all can think of that would be great to disinvent, like hit us. I would like to know, because now my brain is like trying to think of something.
Yeah, you're going to see a bunch of stuff now through the rest of the day.
Yeah, like, damn, I should have said that. All right, y'all. Well, thanks for listening. I'm still super hype about, you know what I'm saying, being from Oklahoma and all the amazing things that are going on in the town.
Good. And we want you guys to check that out. Listen to us next week. We'll be back.
Bye, y'all.